Okay, so I'm just gonna do a little bit of streaming today and just kind of go as long as it takes to work on this asset. I've been showing students in my 247 class how to, it's like the first week of class, first week of modeling for most of them. So I've been showing them how to do low poly assets inside of Blender. But what I wanted to show today is how you could take one of those like low poly assets, like in a stylized low poly game with like flat shading, and turn it into a stylized asset and actually do hand painted textures right inside of Blender, which is much more convenient than the way I used to do it when I used to do this stuff in Photoshop. Let's flip over. I want to see if my chat want to pop in. It'd be nice if that was just not there. I guess I could switch the source to just Blender and not the thing. But, okay, Sarah. So, I think I have stuff up. You know what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pop this chat out. I'm going to organize my windows a little differently here so that there we go. I should be able to see the chat and anybody in here. Cool. So I have a pretty standard asset in here. You know, just it's a basic treasure chest. There's nothing that special to it, but it looks, you know, relatively decent with a standard low poly kind of shading. So the first thing I want to do to get it more stylized is I want to add a few more like built-in details that are modeled into the thing. So I'm going to go back to my flat kind of like solid shading where I'm not looking at all the little details, and I'm going to make some edits to this. I'm also going to go ahead and split this back into parts. So I combine it all together so I could better stylize everything. I might keep it that way for a while, but for what I want to do at this exact moment, I want to split it into parts so that I can better make some cuts in a couple places. So I'm going to take A, and I'm going to do P, and I'm going to do by loose parts. And this will just sort of divvy everything out to its own little bits. And that way I can work on everything one at a time. So if I do Shift H on anything, it'll hide everything else and show everything else. And Alt H brings it all back, which is pretty nice. I don't need that guy anymore. And it's just a quick way of popping in and out and looking at stuff. What I want to do is start editing some things. I want to take a look at this lock first because I want to use this as like a test case to say this is going to be the basis for what I want to do. Right now it's neat, but it's pretty flat. So I'm going to go ahead and start by throwing a basic bevel modifier on the whole thing, but doing it by angle. So I get this nice chunky kind of look to stuff. Something like that should be pretty good. So, and then I'm going to go ahead and apply it, and it gives me that nice kind of area, but it's still too just like standardized. I'm going to take all of these and I'm going to do a transform randomize. Let's see how that works for me. It's taking a second, which is always concerning. Oh, here we go. So I can set how much I want it to randomize, and sometimes it's just fun to do like a little shift like this. There's other ways of doing this too. So like I could do this as a randomize, but what I kind of want to do is, you know, I'll pop it into my sculpting mode really quick. This is one of the reasons I have my Wacom tablet all built in here, is it makes it easier for me to just grab and move things. So F changes the size of this, and I can just make some big shape adjustments because I want to take this and get the idea of like read this like key. So get this more shaped like a lock. Because I'm looking for the shape language of the keyhole opening more than I need anything else. Okay, let's go back to my object mode and bring back everything else with Alt H. So we can see like this looks a lot more like exaggerated and stylized. And what I want to do is actually go to shade smooth on it because I'm going to be painting a lot of stuff on this. So I want to keep this smooth shaded throughout. This is going to be a nice little feature, but I don't want to necessarily take everything and give it like a huge bevel to all of it because that would be too much. I just want some surfaces. So maybe like this bottom edge here, I just want to lift up this lip like so. And I've already triangulated this. This would be great if I had kept all the modifiers when it was all still in quads. And I can quadrangulate it, but it's That's not a big deal. I'm just going to go around and select some of these. And make sure I got the whole loop. Yeah. And then I can hit Control V and just give it like a bevel, because that is going to make the edge more interesting. Now what I can do too is like create some interesting shapes in there by like thinking about, well, this has got some wear and tear on it over the years, so let's take this. I'm going to take K from my knife tool. I'm going to make a cut like kind of like a scratch that runs through this whole thing all the way up to about there. Let's come back down to there, and I'm going to hit enter. Let's go ahead and hide everything else. Let's do that. I got to get the whole object and then hide everything else. So I got this little cut now that runs through it. Actually take K and make sure I finish out this loop. Okay. And I can take now K again. And make a cut going through here. It's pretty messy, this kind of work, but I don't really mind. That's kind of the fun of doing this type of asset. I'm going to drag this back a little bit. So we can see like it's going to give me like a cool profile that gives it like an interesting story beat. And let's get a nice big one on the back here too. This time I'm going to do a slightly different cut. By hitting the K tool, I can do a different way, like angle constant or Z slice through, and I want to hit Z slice through, and I want to make sure I'm not here. So I can like kind of cut through up to there, and then back down to there, and then hit enter. And that's going to make like a nice little kind of slash all the way through everything. And actually, I kind of just want to get through the metal part, so let me do this again. Do K. And I can make like a slice like that and enter, and then K, and then draw it through here and enter. And you know, like a little messy makes this a little bit more fun. So get all these here, and I'm just gonna G and put in. Cool. So like the more I do this kind of thing, you can see the more the like cool, exaggerated details I can get on stuff. So one of the things I'm going to do now is I want to get just the triangulation I actually want. So I'm going to go ahead and select all of this, hit X, and I'm going to do limited dissolve. It's going to delete every kind of vert and face that's not doing anything for me. And I also want to unmark some of these as sharp. So Control E, and I want to clear seam. And I want to select these, and I also want to clear seam on these. Control E, clear seam. So that's going to give me seams where I want them and not where I don't. Let's take a look. I got one or two verts that are a little messed up from when I did that little bevel. That's fine. And then what I can do, now that I got this little dissolve and I've kind of put things together, is I can take this whole thing again, and now I can do like a Control T, and then it will give me what I'm looking for. And I'm going to go shade smooth, but you see it's like over smooth everything. And this is where I like to come to my normals, auto smooth. And this angle decides what gets smoothed and what doesn't. So usually it leaves the shape, like the sharp corners. So if it's really low, we can see more of the angles are going to smooth. But since I want to go like a low poly or style, so if I go too high, some of the stuff that I don't want smooth will get smooth. So the default of 30 is pretty good. I also like to set this to a hotkey by just hovering over the little check mark and right-clicking and say assign to quick favorites. And that way, every time I hit Q, I have the option of auto smooth. I also like to do that with wireframe here, assign to quick favorites. So anytime I can wireframe auto smooth, because those are two I use pretty frequently. Then let's go ahead and keep working through the rest of the assets. So Alt H, bring everything back. And let's take a look now at this bottom, Shift H. You know, I think a nice cut in the bottom here too could be fun. I don't want to overdo things, like, because you can definitely go overboard with it, but you know, let's get a nice little kind of cut that runs through here. So it didn't seem to want to drag all the way through. I'm going to try this again with Z, because if I use a limited dissolve, it's going to make cuts here and here, but if I'm going to use that limited dissolve anyway, it won't be an issue. So now I can go ahead and do that knife tool again. Z to make sure it draws through, put it right about here. And then let's take these edges, just push them in this way. It's just fun to add stuff like that. I like it. All right, same deal. I'm gonna take these edges though, and I want to bevel these. And actually, if I do let's do my limited dissolve first, so that I have fewer edges. So X for my delete and limited dissolve, and that's just gonna give me fewer edges that I need to click on as I go around. You know, sometimes, like, especially I find when you get to stylized or hand-done things, it's like expected to be a little messy. It makes it look more like human error and human mistake. And especially if you saw the most recent demo from like Unreal, like messy is gonna be the new thing because computers can do real way better than we can. I'm just hitting up these corners. And usually, if I'm doing something realistic, I want to keep these bevels and these edges super consistent. But since I'm going stylized, like, going a little bit more varied with them is a little bit more fun. I got a couple little extra floating verts here that I want to look out for, so I might just select those two together and Alt-M to combine them in. Oh yeah, I guess I switched between modes, so my screen key's turned off. I want to make sure those are on. Great. So if you're hanging out and you're watching, go ahead and throw a question or two in the chat. Always happy to answer. Take this, Alt-M, and at last. I have my setup going pretty default because, you know, I have students watching it, but usually I like to set, instead of Alt-M, I like to just do M for merge because it's a lot faster. So that's pretty good. Let's take that, shade smooth, auto smooth, and that's going to give me a good base to go with. Like I said, I'm going to spend more time with cuts, but I just want to show you guys how to approach some of this. I wonder if I auto smooth this. That's not bad. I might have to change your auto smooth ratio though to something more like 60. Pull back a little bit because I want some edges. Let's say for this one, I'm going to do right about there. These ones, I am going to smooth these two guys. This one, I think same deal, but I want to leave some of the edges a little bit more structure. So I'm doing that auto smooth everything. Or I leave shade smooth and auto smooth on. That's actually kind of gives me a cool look. Like I like the contrast of the roundness on it. This is more like what I think you would typically see for hand painted asset kind of stuff. So let's get to the actual painting part of it. You can see here, the unwrap is the next thing we got to do, because previously the way that I was texturing this is I was basing it off of dragging everything into like the shells into a different spot, but I actually have to do like a real unwrap on this thing now. So I'm gonna have to change things up a little bit. And I also want everything to be relatively on the same texture space. So I just want to make sure now with these assets that I still have the right seams. So 2, and then let's go ahead and Control E, and I want to clear that seam. And ideally what I want to do is get a nice unwrap that I can paint on without spending too much time on it. So like this whole treasure chest right now, I can't really paint on it because it'll paint through one side to the other if I just use the painting tools. Right now I gotta make a seam along a couple sides of this. So let's go ahead and I'll show you starting on this bottom piece. Shift H. And this is one of the reasons I like that limited dissolve. It just makes it easier to select big regions like this. And then I'm going to go boundaries because I want to select boundary loop. And that lets me get all the edges around something. I'm going to do E, mark seam. I'm going to do same thing, go 3, 3. And then I like to do in opposites because it's just faster. In spacebar, still remembers my boundary loop. Mark seam. Now I have like seams running along that. This whole top bit here is going to be one seam. And I can select this loop running through here. There we go. So alt-clicking on that loop lets me get that whole thing. My boundary and seam. And then I can, let's do the bottom, and then I'll do the other ones by hand. So get these faces, and this is really bad geometry, but I'm going to triangulate it anyway, so I'm not that worried about it. I would never want to put this kind of geometry into a game. And there's, again, it's messy, but I'm doing a demo kind of thing. I'm trying to keep it fast and loose. So just going around and marking seams. Sometimes on bevels like this, it's pretty even. It's hard to tell where you'd make the seam. Just try to even space them out. I feel like UV layouts, being really precise with it, is really important, mostly in cases where you're doing some of the real geometry, like for weight painting, like painting and things like that. So I'm going to go ahead too and take these inside faces. So like all of these I want as have separate faces because, well, if I keep them with the whole shell, that actually might be easier to paint. So I don't want to separate these. So if I do click this guy and I go Control and Shift, should be able to let me go here, here. Oh, there's like a Control Alt. There's like a loop select, edge ring select versus shortest path. So that's what I'm looking for. So it's Control. My screencast keeps turning off. The one problem with that little plugin. I like it, but all right, there it goes. Got all of those. So now I can go mark seam. So I can click one and then Control Alt click this one, and we'll select that whole ring. So this one, Control Alt. This one, Control Alt. Geometry is a little bit messier, and I don't need these seams here, so we'll see how this turns out. Alt, mark seam, click it, Control Alt, and mark seam. And then I don't want here and here. Okay. I'm gonna actually leave the bottom one so you can see kind of the issue of like what's going on and why I need seams in here. But ooh, actually, you know what? So I'm making a lot of seams, and this is good, but quick and dirty is what we're talking about today. So I'm gonna say, you know, forget all of it. So let's select everything here. I'm just gonna do B for box select. That gets me everything. And I'm gonna go to U. Or actually, I have to tab into it, all, and then U. So I have everything selected, even though they're separate objects. And under U, instead of the regular unwrap, which is going to unwrap based on the seams I have, and you can see some of these are not unwrapped properly, I'm going to do Smart UV Project, and let's give it an island margin of 0.6. I want to try that really quick and just see what it looks like. Okay, that's packing it into the space. Also, I don't want this chest thing here. So I'm going to go to my UV editor and I want to clear this because I just want to see. So this has given me a lot of space in between these. The packer in here isn't necessarily the best one I've ever seen. Oof. Not great as far as packing UVs goes. I know we shouldn't be too critical, but I've certainly seen better. You can rotate things in 90 degrees. What if I go 0.03? I want to see how close I can get these together. All right, that'll have to do. I'm not the most thrilled with this, but I mostly want to show you some of the approach and the techniques. I still got overlapping, which I really don't want. So I'm just looking for any of these areas that I think a packer like this would know not to overlap stuff. But that's the kind of thing we want to avoid if possible. Got a lot of empty holes and stuff like that too, which isn't super efficient. But I like, there's other tools that have better auto, but what are you gonna do? So I got basically things packed over. You can see now my textures don't look like they did before, because they were all flat. But now, because everything's here and everything's on its own separate space, I can actually paint different areas, just like when we were applying colors to things. And I can do that right inside of Blender by taking this and going into the texture paint set. So right now it's on this treasure chest thing, and I'm going to go to my materials, and I'm actually going to remove the treasure chest from here. I'm going to remove it from this visible result. And instead, I'm going to select this, this chest here. And if I go to the painting tab, there says there's no textures on it right now because there isn't one. And I'm going to add a new base color and chase. It's like now chest matte base color is probably pretty good to start with. And I want to give it that brown kind of color. So I'm going to drag up in the corner here to pull down a new window. And I'm going to give this one, I want this one to be an image editor. And I want it set to view. And this one I want to just look at this little color because I can go into my new textures, base color, and I can choose. I know. Let's see, my eyedropper work across here. I guess I'll just choose like a good base to work with. Let's do like a nice dark brown color because that'll be like my bleed color. I'll say I don't need an alpha. I'll say okay. So now this paints the whole thing this like dark brown color, and I can come into my fill bucket tool, which will let me choose a color and just fill an object. But what's cool is I can actually pick out colors anywhere with S. So S will go under here, and I can just drag over that color, like pick it out. Let's do a fill. Got all those, but it doesn't seem to want to pick from those. All right, well, I'm gonna try to get close to it because I have like the 27, 54, 65 right in there. So I'll use those values. I think I have these set to HSV. So let's say 0.27, 4, 0.65. Not even close. Maybe it is RGB value. No, this isn't going to be right either. I wonder what values I set those to be in. Well, I'm just going to try to get it close. I'm going to eyeball it then. So I kind of want to get that kind of color. Kind of a rich, warm, woody color, like so. And I can paint this guy in, and now in my little drop down here in my paint menu, I want to choose this chest matte base color. So we can see it's painted in the shells that I want. And now I'm going to choose that, like a gold color, like something to be my metal on this. And in here, I can, select whole shells. I'm going to set this to paint mode, and I've got that brush still. And so what I want to paint is the bands that run across stuff. So I can get just these areas, and it'll let me paint just the seams in between stuff. And since it's got a little bleed over, it works like a Photoshop painting thing. So I'm looking for all of these. And that's going to be an area where it kind of paints over the whole thing, and I think that's the inside. So I got to be a little bit more careful, and this is maybe where I'll switch over and I'll do this by hand. So I'm using my pen because it's going to make it easier for me to use, say, my brush here. F goes down in size, and in my brush settings down here, I want to turn off the strength pressure sensitivity because I want this to come through nice and solid. I also want it to be the right color, so what I can do down here is I can actually create a color palette as I'm going. And so I'll add a new palette, and I'll add this color, and then I'll S over here, and I'll add a new color for this palette. That'll be nice to always have those two colors ready to go, so I can switch over, and that'll let me just paint on this. So get this color, and anything outside of the texture space is not a big deal, so I don't really have to worry about that. I can also paint over. Now, there's no tools really yet that let me visually see, like just paint whole shells. It would be really nice if that feature existed. Not quite there yet, unfortunately. And I can paint in both locations. Like I can paint in here as well as in here. Like I said, it's one of the things that's pretty nice about using this as a tool. I'm going to go in and now I'm going to start painting these, and I can always come back and correct things because it's, like I said, it's a hand painting tool. The whole point is I'm about doing stuff by hand. I'm just going to paint across this in here in my 3D viewport. And yeah, forgot about every time I switch a mode, screencast turns off. So F, let's make this a little bit bigger. I'm just painting through this. I'm gonna go Shift H on this specific object here. I can see just this stuff. Go back to paint mode. All right, well, I'll just turn the rest of these off then. Okay, so just gonna go around now and paint out some of the other stuff. And so if I paint over here, I can bleed right into that other one. It can get a bit annoying, but I'm gonna try something. I tried it before and it didn't quite work, but let's see if I can do it this time. Because these are separated by seams, I'm just gonna hit L over the ones that are supposed to be wood. And then probably this, say like this here. And if I did this and I did invert, I don't think there's an invert selection. What if I do drag across with shift? Will that invert my selection, or is that no? Or is it a control drag, or is it a control alt drag? Which one is it? Or I can do it in select, can I? Yeah, control I is going to be invert my selection. Thanks, hotkeys. So I got these selected, which are just the metal parts. Fortunately, I can still paint over everything else. no. Can you let me see just this? What if I just go Shift H and I'm only looking at this stuff? Nope, that's not doing it for me. Because it would be nice if I could just select this and then only paint on this thing, but it doesn't seem to work that way, unfortunately. Yeah, well. Just do it by hand. At least it's like highlighting stuff for me. Oh, this unwrap is not great. All right, let's say that I like this. Now I want to go through and hand paint out now some features. Ooh, this guy. Is that this one? Alrighty. So it's kind of flat and it's kind of bland right now. I'm going to switch the lighting over really quick so I can see this a little better. Instead of like this, I can set it to matte cap, which is like a nice flat kind of a shading thing, or I can even go straight to flat and turn on cavity, which is basically what a cavity does is it highlights the insides like black, it shades the black, and it highlights the outsides with like white. So it makes it easier to see some of these features. Check this guy out. I guess it's this one. So I'm working at a pretty low pixel resolution. I think I set this to 1024 when I started working, which once upon a time was a very high resolution. This guy. Okay, this will be a good start. Now I can kind of come in and start painting over some of these areas. And what I want to do first is like get a lighter tone and a darker tone. So sometimes we want to think in terms of gradients. So over here in my palette, I want to make a lighter version of my white color, and I want to go a little bit paler with it. I'm going to say plus, that's going to be my light color tone, and I'm going to take this one, I'm going to go a little darker and a little richer with it. That, and that can be like my lower tone. So if I take this now and paint over, if I reduce my brush size, say like so, I can use this to paint over areas that are like uplit. So treating this more like I said, a traditional painting thing. And then I can also think about painting like the whole top of this. So I'm going to take F, and instead I'm going to go back to that strength and set my strength up higher. So this is one of the reasons I really like having this brush control, like so. Is your pressure sensitivity will let me make like tiny light strokes. And I can even make it more subtle by reducing the strength. But I'm just brushing across like my highlights. So anywhere that I think would get light on it, this is a shameless plug for any of Ricardo's courses, which are great because he talks a lot about like art fundamentals. Always, always good to understand like any core or fundamental principles. This is going to let me now just hand paint across highlights on stuff. Like these two. I'm sure there's different ways of like really masking things out using more advanced shading stuff, but like I said, I kind of just hit the basics right now. With that though, I want to take a look at some wood and think about like the planks on this and stuff like that. Because I can also paint in here. Let's take this. I'm going to drop down its resolution, and my brush now I can paint in here. I want to come back up to full strength. So I want to just kind of check where it is I'm painting on this. Not really need that window anymore. Join these two areas right now. And where was I painting on? This guy right here. So I'm kind of painting across, and I can sample this and just paint back this color. Let's go with this slightly darker tone. And what I can do is change my radius to have pressure sensitivity so that a lighter touch not only makes less opacity, but I can get thicker and thinner lines. Which is going to be great. So I can come in here, just draw out this darker color. A nice little like kind of waviness to the line. So now I have like a basic line in here. And follow it like a hand. Etch it in. I keep trying to use I'm so used to tablets with like ZBrush, so I keep using ZBrush buttons to do stuff. Keep switching my view. Set one of my pen buttons to function more like a traditional like middle click. So take this, maybe I'll make like a little knot in here. I've started with my more mid-tone color, and then I painted these guys in. Now I can go a little larger, and I paint a little softer. This is just one stage of it. For me to be painting out some little beams and come back in, shade a little bit, just get a little bit of like modeling to it. Then what I can do is take a lighter tone, maybe in this one I made earlier for like the gold. Let's go a little bit smaller. And actually, bring that up. That looks like it's too green for what I want. Yeah, that's more what I want. So let's take smaller in here. Just sketch across. Across there. Now I can start kind of painting it here. Just be making kind of streaks across for like my lighter tone. Remember, like wood is sort of painted this way. Just got these like fibers in it that are different tones and colors. But I'm focusing in here on where my lightest and darkest tones are, and I want to put them close together in like a really strong line. Get the impression of a shadow and a highlight. Actually, what would be really useful, and I think I'm going to do this right now, is I'm going to turn this into another 3D viewport. So I can see as I'm going, change it to flat shading as well. Yeah, and that way I can be right in here and making like little changes, and I can see them up there. Just get to see like real time what effect this is giving me. Turn off radius because I want to keep the same size radius throughout this whole thing, and make some of the shadow under here. So what I like to do in Blender, kind of when I'm working with hand painting, it's not super precise, and hand painting is usually pretty subtle because you want it to blend. The more you can see the pixels, like the worse it looks. So I like to stay kind of rough in my first pass, like so. Just put things basically where I want them. And then I can come in with this little guy, which is like a smudge brush. Lets me kind of blend things together. So I can kind of drag over these. And it reduces some of the sharpness, but kind of makes some of the marks a little subtler. And I can also use soften, which is nice for this too. It just takes these areas and kind of blurs things out together, depending on the look you want. If you want to go for like that more subtle hand painted across. So, you know, I'd just be thinking as I went through this is like, where are the marks on this? Where are my, you know, brush marks? What are the colors I want in my palette? You know, and start by roughing in my planks. This is a technique I want to show you, like more advanced versions of this as we go throughout the next couple of weeks. But I thought this would be a nice introduction to at least show you, if you're interested in this kind of thing, you can dive deeper into it. If you want to learn more about it, you can. The brushes have all sorts of tools. You can add alphas and grunge stuff. You can even use like Photoshop style grunges for your brushes if you want. And if you wanted to like export this to a game engine, you know, you can always take an image and just export it from here, which is pretty nice. You know, so you could take any image you want and just export it directly. That's all I wanted to cover today. Just talk about this really quick in a little stream. So thanks for the couple folks who dropped in and just watched it here. And I'll see y'all in the next one. And maybe I'll be doing some more AAA character stuff next week for fun. All right. Thanks, everybody.